and welcome to Dragon Academy. So I'm really excited to be doing a flip through for you. I was hoping to print everything off, but I have run out of ink and it's going to take a few more days to get the ink, and I wanted to get this video up, so I'll show you as it is now, and at some point I'll show you once it's all printed out. Okay, so what do you get? So when you download a Dragon Academy, you will get a student book, which is currently 210 pages. You'll get a teacher guide, which is 149 pages, and you'll get a 36-week schedule. Okay, so with the teacher guide, there is a UK and a USA one. The only difference is a couple of words are spelled differently, that's all. Otherwise, they're identical. So with the teacher guide, you get your front cover, obviously, here, which I will be laminating. You do get a back cover as well. This is the cover for your schedule. It's sideways because it needs to be printed landscape. Okay, and now we get into the meat of your teacher guide. So we've got Dragon Academy information. So this has got your book listing. Now this is specifically for language arts on this page. So naturally we need books 1 through 6 of the Wings of Fire series, because the Dragon Academy covers books 1 through 6 of the Wings of Fire series. I've just gone into PDF so I can click the links. Okay, so as I said, books 1 through 6 are needed. So this is all for the language arts portion. So you also need the Usborne sci-fi and fantasy stories from Usborne, which I've linked for Amazon for you, but I've also given you the ISBN in case you want to get it from elsewhere, used or something along those lines. You need the Write and Design Your Own magazine, again from Usborne. You need a field guide to griffins, unicorns and other mythical beasts. This is for your creature magazine. Now if your child wants to do realistic creatures, I've got another book option for them, so you just choose which one is most applicable. You need the Dragon Grammar book. And if your child would like to do realistic creatures rather than mythical ones, then you also need What's Where on Earth Animal Atlas, but again that is optional. If your child is happy doing mythical creatures, then you don't need that one. Okay, now moving on to science. So for science we're going to be doing chemistry, biomes, biodiversity and geology. Our science is called Prey Center Science because in book 6 the dragons call their kitchen where they all eat the prey center, so that's why it's kitchen chemistry. Some of the things are going to be edible, so that's why we've gone with the prey center. So for science for chemistry, you need kitchen chemistry, cool crystals, rocking reactions and magical mixtures. This is what it looks like. You need the kitchen science cookbook. Now this is optional. This is Scholastic's periodic table. It's a beautiful, absolutely stunning book, really visual. Now the reason I put it as optional is because it's used in the notebooking style, so it's under our topic of elements, and I have included a printable for your child to use if they want to do the notebooking with the elements, which I'll show you in a second, but this is optional, what I consider optional. The next book is Usborne What's Chemistry All About? Okay, moving on to biomes. So we've got biomes, discover the Earth's ecosystems with environmental science activities for kids. The Usborne Geography Encyclopedia. Our next science unit is biodiversity. Geology lab for kids. This is Scholastic Rocks, Minerals and Gems, and as with this Scholastic periodic table, this one is optional. I've put it under our elements unit because of the fact that it's geology related. Again, it's an absolutely beautiful book. You can use it if you want to, it's up to you, but I have put a printable in there if you decide to use it, and the way we are using it is notebooking with this notebooking sheet that I have made to go along with our geology. The next one is another optional one. This is Science Experiments You Can Eat. The reason I've got two chemistry edible books is because my daughter really loves experiments, and there are some really good ones in this one, but you don't have to get both. This one is the one I consider optional. I have scheduled in the experiments for this one though, unlike the periodic book and the Rocks, Minerals and Gems where I've just left it up to you. I have actually scheduled in the experiments for this one as well. So if you wanted to get both, if your kid is like mine and really loves the experiments, then obviously that's an optional one for you. This one, Science Experiments You Can Eat. Now this is optional, but in book 2, they spend an awful lot of time in the ocean because Tsunami is a sea wing. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to get some ocean in there, just some extra science. So you've got two choices. You could get Ocean Anatomy for notebooking. I haven't scheduled these in because this is optional, but it's there if you want to consider it. I have put some blank notebooking pages in for you if you want to do the Ocean Anatomy. Or another optional book is DK Underwater World. Now this is more historical in nature because it's mythical creatures, talks about shipwrecks. It's a really interesting book. So I wouldn't class this as science, I would class it more as history. Again, you can use the blank notebook pages if you want to do this one, but again, Ocean Anatomy and Underwater World are both optional. And the last optional one is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. This is a very expensive book. As you can see, this is $22. I have not scheduled this in, but say for example you've got a used copy like I have, which was only $8, then you might want to use this as part of your Mythical Creatures magazine, with that Griffins, Unicorns and Mythical Creatures book. But again, this is optional because it's very expensive and I didn't want to put a very expensive book in there. But if you already have it, or you can find it at a reasonable price, or money is no object, then this would also be great to go along with your Griffins book to do your creature magazine with. Okay, now moving on to IT. The first book you need for IT is Coding for Beginners Using Python. This is an Usborne guide. The next book you need is Build Your Own Website for Beginners, again another Usborne. For art, we'll be using Dragon Art. So this has fantastic dragons and creatures as well. And your history, which is called your Legends, you need DK Dragon World. As you can see, there are several books you need, but that's because this is a literature-based unit study. But I have really tried to pick books that are not hugely expensive and that are readily available used, should you want to go that way. Okay, we've just got some optional extras on here that I found. So I've made a Pinterest board. There's some apps that are really good. Well, as you can see, lots of different links. Okay, next in your guide is instructions for each of the components. I'm not going to bore you with reading those. You can read them if you purchase the curriculum. But it does have all the information. So for example, dragon grammar, how I envisage you doing it. Well, how we'll be doing it. So I imagine you'll be the same or similar, or as with any curriculum, you can tailor it. As you can see, I've gone through each subject. And I completely skipped over the geography book. So for geography, aside from the Usborne encyclopedia, which you mainly use for science, you need All About China, stories, songs, crafts and games for kids. This is a really beautiful book. Okay, so you've shown me the books, so how do I use it? Okay, so you've got a schedule that is laid out week 1 through 36. On the left-hand column here, it's got all your resources that you need for that particular week. And it's broken down into what book you're going to be reading. So this is obviously week 1. So book 1 is the Dragonette Prophecy. Then we've got what language arts we're going to be doing. We've got our non-fiction books down here. So we've got our science. We're starting off with kitchen chemistry. We've got our kitchen science cookbook, our science experiments you can eat. Again, that's optional, but I have scheduled those ones in. You have got your periodic table, which is your scholastic book. I put a note here to tell you that it's optional, but you can use the notebooking sheet under the elements section of your student guide, which I'll show you in a second, if you want to do that. What's chemistry all about? I've put the chapters that you need to read, and then I've put the video links for the videos to go along with it. If there are any games, which there are, or activities. Dragon art, I've put what pages you need to do for your dragon art. Rocks, minerals and gems is on there for when it appears, but we're not obviously doing geology right now, but it will be obviously later on. We've got our coding. We're using coding with Python first, so it tells you what pages, what videos you need to watch, and then we're moving down to geography. So it tells us we're reading our All About Geography book, which is pages 4 and 5. Our printable, we are going to be doing the China fact file, and then there's a video facts about China for you to watch. In terms of your science books, the kitchen chemistry, it tells you what chapters you could be doing. So this week you're going to be doing the Intro to Chemistry Matters. It gives you the videos or website links that you need to watch. Again, with language arts, it tells you for dragon grammar what you're going to be doing, a day 1, day 4 schedule. That is all explained, the instructions for that in the teacher guide. It'll tell you what pages you need to do in your Usborne sci-fi and fantasy storybook, and then if there are any links or anything that are related to that you need to click on and watch, whether it's a video or a website. In terms of reading, it tells you what chapters you need to read, and then if you see here it says scrolls day 4 and scrolls day 5. I'll show you what that means in a second, but that's what a typical week will look like on your schedule. So it's laid out for you, apart from obviously the optional things, which is in this case the periodic table. That is optional. The ocean is not on week 1. You'll see it on later on when we get to book 2. You'll see ocean appear again once you've finished with the kitchen chemistry book. That'll disappear and you'll see biomes. I'll just show you that actually. Okay, so this is week 11. We've switched books. We've gone on to The Lost Heir. And as you can see, there's the ocean notebook if you are obviously doing the ocean notebooking. So in terms of everything else, we're coming to the end of The Lost Heir. We have got our grammar still, we've got our sci-fi and fantasy storybook, we're on page 70 now. We've got some video links for things that are related to the Osborne sci-fi and fantasy storybook. We're on biomes now, so we're on our first introduction chapter to biomes. These are the either video links or websites. These are experiments that we're going to be doing. It's a 3-day one because it's got to dry. Here's our kitchen science cookbook. We're doing ironing our breakfast, which is page 67. I found a video link to go with the actual kitchen science cookbook experiment for that week. And then a second one, which is magnets for kids. If you're doing science experiments you can eat, we're doing chop suey. Dragon art, we're on page 54 to 55. Coding, we're on page 40 to 41. In our All About China book, we're on page 42 and 45 to read, and then we're going to do a calligraphy card. As you can see, and there's our second art project for that week for Dragon Art. So as you can see, it's all laid out for you, apart from the things that were optional, which is either the ocean or the periodic table or the rocks and minerals, depending on what science you're doing at that time. Everything else is laid out for you. Okay, so now let's look at language arts, because I guess if you're watching this video, your kids are Wings of Fire fans, so that's where the Wings of Fire comes into it. Okay, now in your teacher guide and in the student pages, you both have the same sheets. The only difference is you have the answers and they don't. So I'll show you what it looks like in the teacher guide, and then we'll look at the student book. So for example, this is what you'll see. If you notice, I spread out the chapters in the schedule. Obviously that's because they can't, well, they might want to read that many in one day, but I know not all kids would want to read that much in one day. So I've set it out that you'll read 6 chapters a week, which I think is, that's about right in terms of not reading for pleasure, but, for actually doing something with the things you're reading. So it's set up in chapter questions. It depends on how many questions I thought were actually relevant. So you might get 6, you might get 3, you might get 5. It varies. In this one, you have 2. So they'll read the required chapters and then they can answer the questions. In this case, there's a video for them to watch if they're not sure what a metaphor is. The video link is in your guide. Then the scrolls activity, so they've got 2 activities that they need to do. Often they're writing related, that's why they're called scrolls. In Wings of Fire, any book is called a scroll, so that's why their writing is called scrolls. Now the chapter questions, some of them can be done orally. Some of them will need them to look things up, so they'll need to get a dictionary and a thesaurus, things like that. Other things they will need to write. So just because it's a chapter question doesn't mean that they won't have to write anything, but some of them will be oral. And as you can see, some of them will have a video if they need more help. Now at the bottom, it's got printables. So this is where you'll go to the student section, the student guide, and they'll have all the printables in there for them. So in each week I have got 4 options. You don't have to do every single one of them, but at least I'd always do your talent writing, which is your copy work, and I'll show you that in a second. Figurative language, I probably wouldn't say they had to do it with every single chapter, but maybe at least 2 out of the 6 chapters that they'll read that week. If they saw some figurative language, they could write it onto their printable. It will come in handy for them for in future writing and everything else. Vocabulary, if there's any word that they haven't understood or needed help with, then they can do a vocabulary worksheet, printable. And then what happened in these chapters, again, I wouldn't have them do that for every single chapter because that's not going to be fun, but I'd periodically drop it in and say, okay, now let's do one of the printables for what happened in this chapter. But if you find that they're not remembering anything when it comes to answering their questions, then maybe do that a little bit more regularly until they do start to remember a little bit better, as maybe they get used to it. But in terms of what we were doing, we'll always be doing our talent writing. I'll ask her to pick 2 out of the 6 chapters she's done that week to find some figurative language. Vocabulary will be when it comes up, and then what happens in these chapters, I'll sprinkle those in. Okay, and this is what the student has on their guide page. So they've got that, it looks exactly the same as you. It's got a little symbol on, make it more fun, and also you can tell the difference. And aside from the fact that it doesn't have the answers on, so that's the main difference. It does have the page where the answer is if it's a direct answer. If it's, you know, ambiguous in terms of, you know, its personal opinion or something along those lines, and it doesn't have the page number on there. But for anything that is, you know, a specific yes, no, black, white answer, then the page number is there. The only time I didn't is if it was super, super long, the answer in the teacher guide, in which case I'd just put the page number. But the majority of the time I wrote the answer for you in your teacher guide, unless, like I said, it was direct quoting from the book, which I didn't do if it was super long. But as you can see, it tells them what page to go to if they need help. So if you ask them this question, so what dragon treasure was stolen by the scavenger, and they look at you blank and they have no clue, then you can tell them to go to page 23 and they can find it on the page to help them find the answer. And in this one, it's talking about metaphors. In your teacher guide, there was a video for them to watch if they don't know what a metaphor is. They'll complete their questions, they'll do their scrolls, you'll assign them whatever printables you want them to do, and then they'll do the other language arts activities from the spreadsheet, which in this week was the Dragon Grammar, and it was also the Sci-Fi and Fantasy Writing Guidebook. And they will do their talent writing, but that's in your printable right there. Okay, I'll show you another example. So this is chapter 10 to chapter 12. This has got the questions. Actually, let me just go into the, oh, yeah, no, I am. I was going to say I'm going to go into the teacher guide, but I already am. This has got 4 questions that they will need to answer. Then it's got their scroll activities. So in this case, we have got something that they need to look up in a dictionary. So Starflight mentions 3 special powers he thinks the Nightwings have. Look them up in a dictionary and write about them. So we've got telepathy, precognition, and invisibility. And then we've got, if you could have one of these superpowers, what would you pick and how would you use your powers? And then we've got, Clay had thought that Starflight was limping, but then he realised he was moving oddly because he was carrying a giant sack of scrolls on his back. Starflight is the history buff of the group. If you could only pick 5 books that you could take with you on a journey, what 5 would you pick and why? Then again, you've got your printables at the bottom and student pages for the same questions and scrolls activities. Okay, I'll show you one more. So chapter 13 to chapter 15. In this case, we have got 6 chapter questions and a B as well, a 6B. So in this one, they've also got to watch a video, or not got to, but if they need help, they can watch a video. So Peril looks different than the Skywings Clay has seen. How does he describe her eyes? So he says her eyes were startling, like 2 small blue flames blazing through the smoke. So I've put this as figurative language. Watch this video to learn more about figurative language and add this sentence to the figurative language chart. We've got some information about internal dialogue, or inner dialogue, however you'd like to describe it. So why does the text look different? Obviously that's because he's thinking rather than speaking. So inner dialogue. Scroll activities for this lesson were throughout chapter 13 to 15. There were examples of cause and effect relationships, so one thing makes something else happen. Can you think of an example from the text? And then compare the characters June and Kestrel similarities and differences in a Venn diagram. And then they've got their usual printables. And that's what it looks like in their guide. I did put the link this time for the figurative language in there because I thought they might need help with that one. And that's the next part. Okay, we moved on to book 2. So this is Tsunami's book. Again, we've got 4 questions. We've got our scroll activities. So quite a few videos. Here are all about show, not tell, because that's what they need to do. They need to write their own conversation between 2 characters, add in actions and emotions to convey feelings. So those videos are there to guide them. And then we've got Tsunami seems to be having some trouble adapting to being in the water. Can you find some examples from the text to support that statement? Again, we've got our printables. And the same for the student pages. I'll just show you one more because I don't want this video to be super long, but this is chapter 7 to 9. This is the student page, as you can see. The reason I'm showing you this one in particular is because I did add some art in the lessons as well. So you do have your art in your dragon art book, but I did sprinkle art throughout the 6 books. The language arts for the 6 books. So for example, in this one, we're reading the descriptions of Queen Coral and Anemone. The author gives you, then we're going to draw Tsunami, Queen Coral and Anemone together. Once you have drawn them, paint or colour them in with a medium of your choice. This is not spelt incorrectly, it's just because it's US and my spell check is set to UK. This is the US guide. In the UK guide, it would have a little U there and I wouldn't have that squiggly line telling me I've spelled something wrong. The word colour, in case you can't see. Okay, now for your talent writing. So I mentioned in my video that I would be picking out sentences or paragraphs for my daughter to do copy work on. I'd pick them really for a reason. So whether it showed really good descriptive writing, where it showed great emotion, you felt like you were there in the book, it really brought it to life for you. There was strong verbs in a particular sentence and, really showing her how to write dialogue and things like that. So in my daughter's, I've actually wrote out the copywork sentences, but obviously due to copyright, because I didn't just pick sentences, sometimes it was a paragraph, I couldn't put that much into this for you because of copyright. I can't write all the author's words into my unit study. So the best thing that I could come up with was to write for you your list for each book. So you've got 6 of these pages, book 1, book 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. It'll tell you what chapters that is the talent writing for. So in this particular case, it's for chapters 1 to 3. So this is the talent writing you'll be doing. As I said, talent writing is copywork from the book. So it's page 12, lines 1 through 8, starting with clay, ending with escape. That was the best I could do in terms of not obviously wanting to breach any copyright. But I thought rather than just putting the page and the line number, if I told you the first and last word, then if you didn't want to search, you could give it to your child and they could find it. But if over the summer perhaps you might want to type them out for them, it's up to you. If not, then obviously you can just give them this list, or you can, once you've shown them how to find them, find a couple if they've never done that before, then they can search for them themselves and just copy it out themselves, or you can obviously write it down for them, or print, type it up over the summer, and then they'll have it all like my daughter's got, where it's all going to be printed out for her, so she'll just literally have to copy it. But I couldn't put that in the unit because I'd be using too many words of the writer's text, which would have a copyright issue. But starting with sorry and ending with could, that's generic enough that I can't get it done for copyright. But you've got your page number, you've got your line number, and you've got your first and last word for your copywork, or as we're calling it, talent work, or talent writing, I should say, talent writing. That's your back cover for your teacher guide. Okay, so let's look at some of the printables now. So this is for your vocabulary word. This is for your what happened in your chapter. For each book, it will ask them in their scrolls usually to do a character profile for each of the characters. So they'll be using this sheet. So we've got all the different characters that it's required for. So we've got Clay, Thorn, Tsunami, Glory, Sunny, Peril, Quibbly, Moon, Turtle, Winter, Starflight, Morrisia, and that's everybody that's in books 1 through 6. So they'll fill that out when it's required. Those are your character traits, or character profile is how I've put it in the scrolls. So it'll say complete a character profile for Morrisia, and then they'll get, hopefully you printed it out for them, and then they can do their character profile for Morrisia. For one of the activities in their scrolls, they'll be going shopping for some edible stuff. So they've got a little shopping list. Now, as well as the scrolls and the chapter questions, there are 3 additional projects spread out throughout the year for language arts. One of them I've already mentioned, and that's a creature magazine. So this is your notebooking sheet that you will use for your creature magazine, whether that's mythical, using the Griffin's book, or real, using the DK animal book, Animal Atlas. So basically they'll fill out the notebooking page for the particular creature that they're researching, and then they can obviously use that information to help them when they're making their magazine. They'll have already completed, prior to making their magazine, the draw and write your own magazine book, you know, the guide from Usborne that I showed you that was required. So they've completely completed that book before they have to do their creature magazine. So in that book, it's got all kinds of really good information about magazines. It has lots of examples of magazines, what they look like, you know, going through font and, you know, color and everything. So by the time they get to actually making their creature magazine, they'll have completed that whole guide. So they should be fine with knowing how to do it, or, you know, have some of my good ideas. But this is just for notebooking purposes, for helping them when they're actually making their own magazine. Okay, so let's look at some other subjects now. So for history, we are doing Legends. Well, it's called Legends. That's our history, and that's the DK Dragon World book I showed you in the beginning of the video. And that is all scheduled out for you in your schedule. So it'll tell you each week what pages you need to read and what printable you need to do. So in this case, for example, you'll read about the dragon eggs, which I can't remember what page it was off the top of my head, but it'll be in your schedule. Let's just say, for argument's sake, 36. So you'll read page 36, and then there will be a printable in here for them to make their own dragon eggs. There was also a section in the Dragon World about the world, and, you know, the layers of the world. So, or I should say the layers of the earth even. So basically there's a printable here for them to do that activity. So basically there's an assigned page in the schedule telling you what pages they need to read in the Usborne Geographic Encyclopedia. I think there's also a video as well linked for them to watch, and then they can draw the layers of the earth and, you know, write and explain them. There's a section in that book for Dragon Science. I'm not showing you every single printable, I'm just showing you a few of them. So there's a section in there for Dragon Science in the DK world. They'll use that sheet for this. And then I've assigned them a tale that they need to write based on the tales that are in the book. So it doesn't have to be original, because they're going to do it keyword outline style. Now, if you've never used IEW and you have no idea what a keyword outline is, do not worry. I have written instructions for you in the teacher guide, but they will do their keyword outline, and then they'll write their dragon tale based on one of the tales in the Dragon Legend, well, it's not Dragon Legends, but it's Dragon World book, which is part of our Legends study about dragons, obviously. Okay, next we've got our science. So it's called Prey Center. As I said, this is the US version, so we were at ER, but on the UK one we were at RE. And we have two different types of experiment sheets. So you've got your basic experiment sheet with results, you know, conclusion, everything else, and then you have a fancy scientific method one. So depending on what you want to do, they're all in there. When it comes down to notebooking for rocks, minerals, and gems, which was the Scholastic optional one I showed you, that if you wanted to do it, these are the notebooking pages for that. So you've got your rocks, your minerals, and your gems. Here's your front cover for your talon writing, and then you've got your paper here, which you can make into a little notebook. That's what I'm going to do. So there's the front cover. There's back cover at the back of the guide, which I'm just using the same back cover for everything. But you've got 2 pages of lined paper there for them to do their talon writing on. We have got our scrolls. So this is the front cover for their scrolls book. So this is for when they're answering the questions as part of their language arts activities. So you've got your front cover, and again, you've got lined. This is for Dragon Grammar. So there's your front cover for your Dragon Grammar. And you've got some specific figurative language sheets here. If you remember, in the printable section of the chapters, scrolls, printable section, it had the figurative language printables. Here they are. So you've got lots of different ones. It gives it a little explanation of what it is at the top in case they weren't sure, but then they can watch that video as well. And then you've got an extra sheet there if you need to. This is Elements. This is our periodic table book with the Scholastic one. Again, this is optional, but I've put it in there. We'll definitely be doing it. So that's your front cover for your elements, and then you've got your notebooking sheet for elements. For China, there's your front cover for the China study. Again, we have got printables for China, so we've got fact file and all kinds of different things. If you decide you want to do the ocean notebooking, then there's your front cover for your ocean, and I put some blank templates in there for you. We've got a fish fact one as well. This is the back cover. Okay, so I'll just show you a couple more examples from the schedule. So this is week 15. We're on to write and design your own magazine now. So it tells you what pages to do that day, and in this case there is a link explore a digital magazine and view a sample. We're still on biomes. We're in tropical rainforests right now, and there's video links and websites for you to look at. I've also put some video links and websites from the Osborne Geography Encyclopedia because it's about rainforest. It goes along really nicely. In Kitchen Science Cookbook, we're making instant ice cream. In art, we've got our art twice a week with our dragon art book. We're still on coding with Python, and in science experiments you can eat its pretzels. It tells you what chapters we're up to in the Hidden Kingdom we've moved on to, which is really good that the Hidden Kingdom is actually about the rainwings who live in the rainforest. So biomes, the reason I picked biomes, in case I didn't mention, is because all of the dragons live in different biomes. So we've got the rainforest, we have got the desert, we have got the ice wings, and one of the reasons why I picked geology as well is because of Darkstalker, who appears in book 6. He resides under the mountain, but also they like to live in caves, and they talk about gems a lot in the stories. So geology is actually quite a good topic to do in a Wings of Fire unit study as well. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to show you, I've just randomly picked these. This is week 27. We're on the Brightest Night book now. We are still doing our Dragon Grammar. If I didn't say, Dragon Grammar is mentor sentence based. So with Dragon Grammar, well, once you've read the instructions in the teacher guide, you'll know more about it. But there's a few options how you can do the Dragon Grammar. You've obviously got the reference book for if you need any help with, you know, understanding the grammar questions or parts of speech or anything. But in terms of where the mentor sentences come from, I'm going to be using talent writing, but you don't have to use the talent writing sentences. You can use a sentence that you have found yourself in the chapter that you think, actually, that's really good for our focus this week, which is going to be on adjectives. So you can say, right, okay, we're going to use that sentence, or if your child has found a good sentence in the book, they could use that, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that's use talent writing for our sentence, for Dragon Grammar, for our mentor sentence. So we are on biodiversity now. We're on chapter 4, some videos, websites to watch. We're on geology now as well. So we were on lab 17 and lab 18 for geology. We're on build your own website now. So there's the pages you need to do and the 2 activities. We have got we started our creature magazine, so we've got our creature printables, so we can do griffins, and we can also do harpies with our creature printable, or optional, they can pick a real creature to research if they don't want their creature magazine to be on mythical creatures. Okay, so here's a quick look at the books. So we've got Dragon World over here, Coding for Beginners, Website for Beginners, Geology Life for Kids, Sci-Fi and Fantasy Story, and Write and Design Your Own Magazines, there for the language arts. This is the China book. It is really, really beautiful. We have got Dragon Art, Griffins, Unicorns and Mythical Beasts. This one is optional, the science experiments you can eat. The other optional, Rocks, Minerals and Gems. I just love them because they're so visual and really great for notebooking because they've got all the facts on one side. The optional DK Animal Atlas if they want real creatures instead of mythical creatures for their magazine. Optional Fantastic Beasts. This is the one I got used and it's in great condition, but again optional. The optional periodic table. This is for your element study, notebooking. This is your spine for your kitchen chemistry. These are from Nomad Press. This is the Kitchen Science Cookbook. We have the Osborne Geography Encyclopedia. This is your biodiversity. Again, it's by Nomad Press. Biomes, again by Nomad Press. And Osborne, What's Chemistry All About? This is the Underwater World. This was one of the optional ones for the ocean. I got it from the library. This is currently from the library, but this is what it looks like inside. You've got all the mythical creatures, but then you do have interesting facts about under the water and the ocean in general. So we've got the Bermuda Triangle, shipwrecks and things. So it's more historical than scientific. And the Ocean Anatomy by Julia Rossman. Again, neither of those are scheduled. They're completely optional, but I have put some blank notebooking pages in if you want to do them while you're reading book 2. So I started printing off, as I said, before I ran out of ink, but there's the teacher guide. This is the back cover for everything. So where you see create at the bottom, that's intended as your back cover. So front and then obviously back. Which one is your favourite cover? So I like the Talon writing where it looks like he's writing with his pen. I also really like the Legends one. And the elements with the gold, that's really cool too. The one where he's holding the Chinese dragon is funny. And where he's doing his science experiments. I started printing off the worksheets as well. So I started binding some of them. Well, punching them to bind, but I stopped once I realised I ran out of ink. But then we've got Clay and Sunny over here. We've got the My Word one for vocabulary. I started printing off my student books. So yeah, that's what it's looking like so far. So this is what I've done for our Talon writing. So you'll read your instructions anyway and you'll see which line and everything else to count, but I put the first and last words. So for example, in the first bit art which I showed you, the first word was clay, the last word was escape, and what page it was. In this case it was page 12. So basically how I intend to do dragon grammar sentences I've explained in the teacher guide, but I'll just explain again. So I'll pick a sentence out of our Talon work, because as you can see, our Talon writing, there's quite a lot here in this section of what they're writing, and this was focusing on dialogue, really writing good dialogue. But say for example we want to pick a sentence for grammar, dragon grammar, out of the first Talon writing section. So I would probably pick something like maybe fires flickered around the edges of the great central cave, echoing space yawned overhead, dripping with stalactites like huge teeth. So that might be the sentence that I pick for dragon grammar, and then we'll look at it together, we'll read it together, we'll look at, what kind of sentence it is, we'll talk about what adjectives she's used, what verbs she's used, if any figurative language and things like that. What makes that a good sentence? Then on day 2 we'll mark certain things, so we'll put V above any verbs, ADJ above any adjectives, etc. On the third day we'll be using the same sentence again, but we'll change a few things. So we might change the adjectives, keeping the sentence the same in terms of its meaning, but just changing a few things. And then on the 4th day we'll change the sentence completely, but keeping the structure the same. So for example, she used 3 adjectives, then we'll use 3 adjectives in our sentence, but our sentence could be about something completely different on day 4. And I would do yours too, so you can demonstrate for them. So that's what I'll be doing with dragon grammar and how I'll use Talon writing as our sentences. But as I said before, you can pick any sentence in the book instead if you find a better one that you like for your dragon grammar. But I like the sentences that I've picked for Talon writing, so that's why I'll probably be using those. But only one sentence. So for example, this is quite large. I wouldn't do dragon grammar on the whole thing. I'd just pick a part of it. Okay, so that's everything. If you've got any questions, let me know below. I think I've done a good overview of everything. It's available to purchase from Etsy. I'll leave the link below. And if you've got any questions, as I said, let me know. But thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.